Yeah, most of my childhood years was with the extended family. My mum, my nana, my aunties, uncles and cousins. We used to all get together and they used to have drink-ups and country music, do's, and just be drinking their brains out, getting drunk. I asked my mum one day, whereabouts did we live? Where were we at the time? And her response to me was she didn't know herself because she was that drunk. So I didn't know half the time where I was from the age of 0 to 8. I ended up getting molested at 3 different times in my childhood. My mum met a guy named Anthony, and he was in and out of boys' homes most of his life, in and out of prison. He was nice at the beginning. He treated me like I was royalty, but I started noticing over time that he started speaking down to me and started bashing my mum violently. He pushed her off a stool. She was 3 months pregnant and she miscarried. Another time she was at a party and a friend of the family kissed my mother. He ended up stabbing him that night and the police came as well. What I found out later is that he threatened my mum that if she ever left him, that he would kill us kids. She tolerated the abuse and the bashing and the stuff that she had to face because she actually believed that he was going to do it. I couldn't deal with the compounded pressure that was upon me and the emotional turmoil I was feeling, and so I started experimenting, inhaling aerosol cans and even inhaling petrol and smoking marijuana, and I experimented with LSD. And then I started taking copious amounts of prescription drugs, antipsychotics to antidepressants to flufenazole injections. And to make matters worse, the side effect tablets that I would take for all these medications was starting to make me hallucinate. They'd take me up to the hospital. My mum said I had superhuman strength. They couldn't control me, and so they kept injecting me with Valium, and they ended up putting me into a drug-induced coma. Sadly, by the age of 19, I was in 7 drug-induced comas. The doctor said to my mum that if your son's ever going to come back from this, he's going to be a permanent vegetable. There is no hope for him. I kept taking that many tablets and medications that they sent me to the second biggest mental institution in Australia at the age of 16 because they did not know what to do with me anymore. Yeah, so being sent to a mental institution done very little for me because majority of the people that my family associated with had mental illness or they were mentally and emotionally unstable, so I fit right in. For me, it was just a drying out time. I ended up going back to Broken Hill and I continued on business as normal. Me and my uncle were together one night high on amphetamines, and he'd open the Bible to me and start preaching. And because I was in a good mood, I thought, oh yeah, sweet, no worries, let's just talk about the Bible. About a couple of weeks later, or maybe a couple of months later, he ended up opening up a gym. And I thought, oh, fantastic, because when I walked into the gym, there was a bunch of dealers there that I knew, and I thought, oh, they must be dealing through the gym. So he said to me, hey, come up the back, and I thought, sweet, I'm going to score, I'm going to get some drugs here today. Another gentleman came into the room that I didn't know. He introduced himself, sat down at the table, and for the next 30 minutes, I, for some reason, just expressed all my emotions and my story to him, my life to him, and I cannot explain what happened next, but this room was filled with euphoric pleasure, and this atmosphere was so strong. All he said was, Mark, do you know Jesus? And I sat at the table and I thought for a second, I thought, nah. And he goes, would you like to meet him? I said, I'll give it a go. And right at that moment, he said, close your eyes and pray this prayer with me. And that day, I asked Jesus, the Son of God, I said, if you are real, forgive me of what I've done wrong and come into my life. I asked Jesus the Son of God, I said, if you are real, forgive me of what I've done wrong and come into my life. So I went home full of enthusiasm, wanted to tell my family Jesus was real. They were cussing and screaming at me. This agitated me. By this stage, my sister's boyfriend jumped in to protect my sister because he thought I was going loopy, and I grabbed him around the throat and threatened to kill him. And then I turned around and punched in the glass door. The first day I gave my heart to Jesus, I was up the hospital getting stitches in my hands. As much as I was hungry for the truth, I was carrying baggage of unresolved issues in my life that needed to be addressed. So I went up and down all the way through my journey trying to work out how I could get my life on track properly. After 10 years of going up and down, my life had become tumultuous again, and I just gave up. I thought, God, you've got the wrong man. So I instantaneously decided to backslide and to remove myself from the church life. Little did I know the path of destruction that I was about to walk on again. I ended up picking up a gambling addiction at the age of 32. I sold all my furniture and I ended up shooting it all up and gambling it on the poker machines. And I remember going home one day, visiting Mum. I laid down on the mattress in the lounge room thinking about how I was going to rip off my sister's PlayStation to get more drugs. And out of the blue, my mum walks into the lounge room. She drops to her knees with this gentleness and love in her eyes. And she said, "Son, I love you. Will you change your life?" And right at that moment, the cord in my heart yanked and the light went on. I decided from that moment on that I was willing to go to rehabilitation and get my life on track for good this time. I had to deal with the stuff that was lingering there from my childhood. And now I was in a place where I believe God was able to work on my life. For years, I'd covered my emotions and my feelings. I tried to hide my behaviours. I didn't want people to know the shame, the darkness, the deep secrets of my heart. But this time was different. I felt like I didn't have other options like I did in the past. And I felt like it was time to start cleaning out the stuff that needed to be addressed. I made a brave choice to man up and to do something that I hadn't done before. I had to face my fears, the fear of failure, the fear of the unknown, the fear of rejection, the fear of man. I had to face this stuff face on. The more I've worked on the inward condition of my state of being and processing through things better, I've found that every limitation upon the way of my journey has been broken off. And so all these dreams that I had in my heart were finally starting to trickle through. In 2012, Tim Hall invited me to go to Papua New Guinea for the first time. And while I was in Papua New Guinea, he got me to share my story in front of 20,000 people. I've been able now to go into churches and to tell my story and to help other people know that there is hope for anyone out there. And now I feel safe. I feel free. I feel like I've got authority to live my life because I'm not doing it by myself anymore. I'm doing it with the body of Christ.